Imagine walking into work every day, surrounded by millions of dollars in cash. Would you be tempted? Alan Pace was. Alan wasn't just any employee. He worked at the Dunbar Armored Depot, a place that supplied banks with cash. It had security, cameras, and a giant vault. But Alan saw weaknesses, and he had a plan. One night in 1997, he and his friends pulled off what would become one of the biggest cash robberies in U.S. history. They were in and out before anyone knew what happened. But how did they do it? And more importantly, how did they get caught? This is the story of a man who thought he had the perfect crime. But one small mistake brought it all crashing down. Before we dive into the topic, don't forget to subscribe to Crime Unsolved for more incredible stories from history. Alan Pace was 28 years old and had a good job at Dunbar Armored. His role was to inspect and maintain the company's armored trucks. That meant he had access to the facility and knew all its security details, where the cameras were, when guards took breaks, and how money moved in and out. But Pace didn't plan to stay an honest worker forever. He saw an opportunity and started thinking about how he could steal millions without being caught. He even got inside information from his girlfriend, Tomiko Carnes, who worked in video security at Dunbar. Then things took a turn. Tomiko was fired, and soon after, Pace himself lost his job. Instead of letting it go, this made him more determined to rob the depot. He wouldn't just steal some cash, he would take nearly $19 million. A heist like this couldn't be done alone. Alan needed a team he could trust, so he recruited close friends, people who had worked with him in security jobs. 1. Eugene Hill, his best friend and the first person he brought in. 2. Freddie McQuarrie Jr., a security guard who had been friends with Pace since childhood. 3. Terry Brown, another longtime friend and security expert. 4. Thomas Johnston, an ex-security officer needed for controlling the guards. 5. Eric Boyd, the driver who would wait outside in a U-Haul truck. Together, they planned every detail. Pace drew a layout of the facility and mapped out their movements. They knew exactly how to avoid cameras and when to strike. Everything was ready. Then something unexpected happened. Alan was fired, and that meant he had to act fast. With no time to waste, Alan called his crew. His firing had forced them to move up their timeline, and if they didn't act now, they might lose their chance forever. His keys still worked, but they wouldn't for long. The heist had to happen that night. To avoid suspicion, the crew came up with a clever cover story. They all attended a party in Long Beach that evening, laughing, drinking, and making sure they were seen by plenty of people. This way, they had a solid alibi. Then around 11 p.m., one by one, they quietly slipped out of the party. No one noticed as they disappeared into the night. 2 men got into a sedan, while the others climbed into a rented U-Haul truck, the perfect vehicle to carry a massive load of stolen cash. As they approached the Dunbar Armored facility, their adrenaline was pumping. Every detail had been planned, every movement rehearsed. Now it was time to execute. The crew moved with military-like precision, following the steps they had practiced over and over. Step 1. Dodge security cameras using the exact blind spots Alan had mapped out. They had studied the movement of each camera and knew the perfect moments to slip by unseen. Step 2. Overpower the only security guard on duty. He barely had time to react before they grabbed him, took his .357 revolver, and snatched his vault keys. Step 3. Capture the dispatcher before he could trigger the alarm. The crew moved fast, pinning him down before he had a chance to hit the emergency button. Step 4. Secure all employees inside the vault prep area, making sure no one could interfere. Then, the real work began. Loading the cash. Inside the vault prep area, stacks of cash wrapped in plastic were waiting to be processed. The crew didn't hesitate. Bag after bag, they shoved the money into garbage bags and tossed them into large wheeled bins. Then they quickly rolled them out to the U-Haul truck, packing in as much as they could. In total, they took $18.9 million, one of the biggest cash robberies in U.S. history. Before leaving, they made sure to cover their tracks. They removed the security tapes, ensuring there would be no video evidence of their crime. With everything in place, they made their escape. By the time the police arrived at the scene, the robbers were already back at the Long Beach party, blending in with the crowd. They acted as if nothing had happened, laughing and chatting with other guests. It was the perfect alibi. No one suspected a thing. At that moment, it seemed like they had pulled off the perfect crime. But no heist is ever truly perfect. At first, the robbery seemed perfect. There was no clear evidence, no fingerprints, and no security footage. But then the police found something, a small piece of broken plastic. It was from a U-Haul truck's taillight. Detectives knew the thieves had used a rental truck, so they began checking rental records. That led them to Eugene Hill, Alan's best friend. Meanwhile, Dunbar executives realized the robbery had to be an inside job. They gave lie detector tests to 130 employees and ex-employees. Only 2 people failed, Alan Pace and his girlfriend, Tomiko Carnes. But even with suspicions, police didn't have enough proof to arrest them. For 2 years, the crew thought they had gotten away with the crime. Then one mistake changed everything. For nearly 2 years, Alan Pace and his crew had managed to keep their secret. They had been careful, spending the stolen money slowly and avoiding suspicion. But in the end, a small, careless mistake brought everything crashing down. Eugene Hill, one of Pace's closest friends and a key member of the heist, made that mistake. He decided to take $100,000 of the stolen cash and invest it in real estate. Instead of laundering the money properly or using smaller amounts, he walked into a real estate office with stacks of cash, still wrapped in Dunbar's original paper straps. These straps were used by banks to bundle large amounts of money, and each one had unique serial numbers and date stamps. Hill, either out of overconfidence or simple carelessness, failed to remove them before making the transaction. The realtor handling the deal immediately became suspicious. It wasn't every day that someone showed up with that much cash, especially money that looked like it had just come straight from a bank. Something didn't feel right. Without hesitation, the realtor contacted the police. When the authorities received the tip, they wasted no time. The FBI forensic team examined the serial numbers on the cash and traced them directly back to the Dunbar Armored Depot. This was the first solid link between the stolen money and a suspect. But that wasn't the only mistake the crew had made. Around the same time, investigators were analyzing a key piece of evidence found at the crime scene, a small fragment of broken plastic. This piece had come from a vehicle's taillight. The FBI then searched through U-Haul rental records from the days leading up to the heist. It didn't take long for them to find a match. The truck had been rented under the name Eugene Hill. Now the police had undeniable evidence linking Hill to the crime. Confronted with the proof, Hill had no choice but to confess. And once one person started talking, the rest of the crew quickly began to fall. With Hill's confession, police arrested Alan Pace and the rest of the gang. Pace, the mastermind, received the harshest punishment, 24 years in prison. His friends got shorter sentences, but they had betrayed him to get reduced time. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe the channel.